Hello everyone, thank you for joining this presentation session. Just a reminder to pop all of your wonderful questions, comments, thoughts into our chat box on the right hand side of your screen. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And just remember, if you do have any technical issues, just to refresh your browser. That does fix most of them. And if that doesn't do the trick, pop over to my account and then get support. Now, with all of that said and done, I'm delighted to welcome Justin Borgman, who is the CEO of Starburst Data, and Richard Jarvis, who is the Chief Analytics Officer for EMIS Health. Thank you both for joining. So if I could welcome you both to join with your videos on and mutes off, ready for what's going to be a fantastic session. Thank you so much.
Outstanding. Thank you, Catherine. So super excited to be here. Let me share my screen. Bear with me one moment. Excellent. And we'll get started. And as Catherine mentioned, please feel free to add your questions in the chat box, and we'll be addressing those towards the end. So we're here to talk about driving digital transformation faster with this concept of X analytics, and we'll explain what that means. But first, a little bit about each of us. So my name is Justin Borgman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Starburst. Starburst is the Presto company. We are behind an open source project called Presto, which was originally created at Facebook and is a high performance query engine that allows you to query data anywhere. That's kind of what makes it special. It allows you to do data warehousing analytics without the need for a monolithic data warehouse necessarily. By way of background, I started my career in data warehousing a little over 10 years ago with the founding of my first company called Hadapt, which was a SQL engine for Hadoop. That business was acquired in 2014 by Teradata, and I ended up spending 3 years there as a VP and GM focused on Hadoop and other emerging technologies for Teradata. Along the way, I discovered Presto, again, at that point, created at Facebook and being used by a number of internet companies. And we had this idea of essentially making it an enterprise-grade solution that a broad variety of industries could benefit from. And with that, we founded Starburst in 2017. The creators of Presto joined us from Facebook. My team from Teradata left, and Starburst was born. And today, again, we bring the power of analytics anywhere, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. But first, Richard, why don't you introduce yourself, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Justin. So I'm Richard Jarvis, the Chief Analytics Officer at EMIS Health. EMIS is a healthcare technology innovator providing kind of capability to the UK predominantly health market. My background is in big data and analytics, pretty much predominantly across a number of different verticals, telecoms, policing, cyber, defense, and now healthcare. I've played with Spark and Hadoop and all the other kind of interesting open source technologies around data, and have been playing with Starburst for a little while now, and love to share my views on it today.
Awesome. Excellent. So with that, let's dive into what X analytics is. And I will say that Gartner prides itself on naming things, and this is something that they came up with. But in this particular case, I think EMIS actually beat them to it with the name of your platform.
Which we did, yeah.
Which is outstanding. Well, let's talk a little bit about the context for why we think this is important today. And that is this notion of digital transformation and some of the challenges associated with that, particularly in the time that we're in. From a recent McKinsey report, they say we have vaulted 5 years forward in consumer and business digital adoption. And you'll see this is a survey of how consumers are interacting within these different industries post-COVID. So you can see banking, 51% was online pre-COVID, now 73%. Entertainment, 40% was consumed online, now 64%. Grocery, of course, being one of the most exaggerated examples here, where it has more than doubled now in terms of the amount of digital adoption. And what that has forced is essentially for companies to essentially rethink their models. And as Deloitte goes on to say, in a way, the current wave of digital transformation resembles how physicians respond to acute medical conditions, rapid and dramatic interventions designed to stabilize the patient and lessen the immediate severity of the condition. Gartner says organizations simultaneously grappling with the challenge that pandemic-induced behavioral and economic shifts have rendered some historical models useless, because of course consumer behavior has changed and therefore our models have changed. And lastly, the combinatory power of more sophisticated and complex analytics on a greater variety of data has become required to innovate our way beyond the post-COVID-19 world. And that's really what X analytics is all about. It's the combination or the intersection of new data with core data being perhaps historical data or data that you've captured for years or maybe even decades, and introducing new data sources to really enrich your understanding of your customer, of your business, and so forth. And finally, I will say Gartner goes on to say that X analytics delivers on the promise of the big data era that achieved the ability to store and manage content, but fell short of enabling analysis of a broad range of content and use cases at scale. And so that's really what X analytics is all about. McKinsey says senior executives will need ready access to both new and newly critical data to make unprecedented decisions in the short term and inform adjustments to their business strategies and operational plans in the medium to long term. So how do we build an X analytics architecture? How do we make better and faster decisions on more data? And we have three pieces of advice for you. First of all, modernize your data architecture, create optionality wherever you can within that architecture, and prioritize connectivity to the data sources that you have. Gartner talks about the practical, logical data warehouse, a strategic plan for a modern data management solution for analytics, and talks about the distinction between known data and unknown data, known questions and unknown questions, and overlays where traditional data warehousing technologies are useful versus a data lake. And essentially, there are benefits to different technologies depending on what you're trying to do. And it's very much our belief that you're going to have a bit of all of this within your overall data landscape. And that creates even more need for a single point of access. And that's fundamentally, I think, the shift that we're seeing in the market is really from this idea of a single source of truth, which has always been synonymous with the enterprise data warehouse, where you have a whole host of ETL pipelines and you're moving data into one single repository. And instead, thinking about this from the point of a single point of access, where the data lives is entirely up to you. You have the freedom to decide where that data lives, but providing your analyst, your data scientist, your lines of business with a single query point to be able to access all of that data where it lives. And that's a new sort of mindset. How do we do that? Well, one of the ways is to create optionality within your architecture wherever possible. First and foremost, by embracing storage compute separation, particularly if you're deploying in a public cloud environment, you want to leave your data in the lowest cost storage option if possible, and scale up and down compute as necessary. This helps companies achieve maximum cost control. Presto, the technology we're involved with, suits this paradigm perfectly because it is really just running within compute and memory. And therefore, you get to decide, again, where the data lives. If you're in AWS, that might be S3, and you can scale up and scale down your cluster as needed. The second point we make is that it's valuable to use open data formats wherever possible. This is the lasting legacy of Hadoop, in my opinion. Hadoop brought us the concept of a data lake, and it also created these open file formats, in particular ORC file and Parquet, which are columnar and therefore high performant for read access. And ultimately, the more you use these files, the more you preserve your own optionality by avoiding vendor lock-in. You can use Spark to train a machine learning model off of the same data that you're using Presto to create a BI dashboard, for example. And then lastly, thinking about creating a consumption layer, essentially an abstraction layer above all of these data sources. And if you do that, you're decoupling essentially your analyst experience from where the data lives. And that gives you a lot of flexibility to decide where that data ought to be, both today and over time, giving you really great future-proofing opportunities. So again, creating this universal access layer, this is how we think about it, with this sort of consumption layer in the middle, all of your various data sources at the bottom. In our case with Starburst, we bring to bear also an element of security, allowing you to enforce fine-grained access control across these data sources. We provide data masking, query auditing, and so forth. We could certainly go into more detail on that at some point if you're interested, and ultimately allow all of your analysts and data scientists one universal point of access for their favorite tools that they like to use across all of the data that you have within your organization. So who is running X Analytics? Well, we're very lucky again to have Richard here and talking about how EMIS is using Presto and working with Starburst to do exactly what we've just talked about. So with that, we'll kick off our fireside chat with Richard.
Okay.
Awesome. Oops, let me see here one thing. Okay, perfect. Can you introduce EMIS to those who are maybe not as familiar with EMIS, Richard?
Yeah, sure. And it's a company that actually will have touched most people in the UK's lives in one way or another, but maybe many people haven't heard of it. EMIS is a technology company that powers most of the healthcare provided to UK citizens via primary care. So going to see your GP, our software covers more than 50% of the market in the UK. But we're in a number of different healthcare settings. So we're in pharmacies, in hospitals. We run one of the biggest patient-facing apps on the Apple Store, where you can look at your patient record and order medications. And as you can imagine, in 2020, where healthcare has been kind of disrupted a bit, to say the least, we've been very, very busy across all of our different businesses, trying to help our customers who are at the end of the day trying to save lives and improve patient outcomes for people. So it's a very kind of critical business to UK healthcare.
That's great, and indeed very important, particularly in the times that we're in. Can you speak a little bit about EMIS Health's vision for data and analytics?
Yeah, sure. So in healthcare for a kind of a long time, certainly in EMIS's history, a lot of these capabilities that we see on the slide now have really been kept separate. Pharmacy systems don't talk to GP systems, and they don't talk to A&E systems or hospital systems. And really, healthcare provision is so complex that you need to be able to see the journey of a patient throughout their different care settings, whether they're seeing their GP or their pharmacist or getting some help in the community, getting a flu jab or indeed a COVID vaccine. Keeping that data together so that researchers can see the effect across the whole healthcare economy means that you can basically do much better research. Examples include things like self-reporting of COVID symptoms that we've done through our patient platform. So we got a very early track of where we saw people experiencing COVID symptoms, but we could then link that through to the impact on GP systems or on pharmacies and so on. So the vision for us is really to exactly as the X Analytics model says, bring that data together, provide it in a way that can be combined to our researchers and to our customers, but particularly providing that very tight security layer on top so that no one can access any data unless they have the rights to do so. So that really is our main vision.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I can see certainly how access control would be an important element of what you do. How does Starburst Enterprise Presto enable the EMIS X Analytics platform?
Yeah, so I mean, without Starburst, we'd have really struggled with a number of things that Presto gives you, but makes open source Presto doesn't solve. So availability, keeping our analytics platform running all the time is really important, as is scalability. And so with the Starburst Enterprise Presto versus open source or other Presto provision, we can get that scalability. If there's any rollouts, they affect service for normally less than 60 seconds. And we have very, very reliable service from Starburst Enterprise Presto. But really the thing that is is front of mind for me when I'm building this platform is the security, and particularly that Ranger integration, where we can, for every patient record, say this is who can access it, this is how it must be anonymized or redacted, and having that confidence in the security that Starburst provides means that we can enable more people to do better research.
Excellent. And one question I'm curious, Richard, just given you've been in the industry a long time and you've played with a number of different technologies, as you mentioned in your introduction, why Presto for this use case, and why not something like Spark? I imagine you considered everything as you were building out your platform.
We absolutely did, and it's not that we don't use Spark. We do have Spark in our wheelhouse as well as Presto, but really the reason for us sticking with Presto is we want to enable tens of thousands of customers to answer hundreds of thousands of questions a week. And so to do that with Spark means, a really complicated architecture, which Spark isn't really designed for answering short running queries, 1 or 2 seconds or a couple of minutes, where Presto we've found is able to run queries for 12 hours or 15 hours without any problem, and also to return results in, I think the fastest I've seen is less than 100 milliseconds. And so we have in one point of access the ability to offer customers all the way from a deep, long-running analytics and machine learning type capability down to a front-end dashboard that can help a GP plan appointments better. And really Spark works well at one end, but not so well at another. There are other alternatives. We're in the AWS environment, so we could use some of their hosted cloud infrastructure, things like Aurora or Athena, but we lose some of the control. Some of the piece that you mentioned in the X Analytics introduction about being able to choose where we store data is really important for us. We have over 200 terabytes worth of data, and if we were all to store that, to store all of that in the highest speed storage, it would be very expensive. And we know that lots of that data doesn't need to be accessed as often, so we can tier the storage appropriate to the use cases that our customers have. And those things really are very powerful, makes our platform very powerful.
Makes a lot of sense. And that last point about cost, I think what's so interesting about some of these open source technologies, Spark or Presto, is that they end up being born out of these internet companies really because of those economic reasons, that you couldn't buy enough Oracle or enough Teradata to run Facebook analytics. It would probably put the company out of business. So because of that, you end up with these world-class, incredibly scalable technologies that allow you to kind of store and process data much more efficiently, much more cost efficiently, certainly.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But what I would say is that even if you're a relatively small consumer, Presto can still really help you. You don't have to have a need for tens of thousands of nodes before Presto becomes relevant. Just the ability for us to virtualize access to MySQL, to Kafka, to S3, and to other databases all in one place makes our job, or makes the customer's job so much easier. They make one connection to one platform and they can see that data from everywhere. And even if that was only 1 or 2 nodes, that value in itself is really useful for us.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm going to start to weave in some questions from the audience here, Richard. So we have one that seems relevant to the healthcare space. With the advent of the electronic patient record, EPS, can you talk about the data integration challenges across the patient pathway?
Absolutely. So I suppose it will be of no surprise to many of our listeners that actually the biggest challenge in an analytics platform is frequently getting the data to be in the format you expect. And that's no different with a healthcare analytics platform. So understanding when a patient is the same person in the primary care domain and their pharmacy and using an app is a big challenge. And there are a number of initiatives in the UK National Health Service and in EMIS and with other parts of the healthcare economy that have looked to building master patient indexes that basically join individual patients to all of their different identifiers across the different care settings. And actually, to bring that back to why is Starburst useful for us here, that we can do all in Starburst. So we have, for example, data from pharmacies, which don't use the same identifiers for patients as they would if they were in a primary care setting. But we can, with a simple SQL statement and some data logic, we can join those two together and present that consistent view to our customers. But there's no shortcut to data quality analysis and understanding your data. Just Starburst makes it easier to do that in one environment.
Makes a lot of sense. Excellent. And what is the future state of the EMIS X analytics platform? Where are you going from here?
Well, we're going to be enabling more and more of our customers to do the things they need to do. So the big focus for us at the moment has been helping the COVID effort, and in a number of different ways, either trying to observe where COVID is becoming prevalent across the nation, because we can see in very short order when GPs are recording information about COVID diagnoses in their practices. So monitoring that helps to inform the UK government and understand how COVID can be managed. We have been doing a lot of work in the research to understand what the impact on patients is, what the impact on the healthcare system itself is, and what kinds of treatments might be useful for patients from COVID. And that's really been a focus of 2020, maybe not one we'd necessarily planned, but happily with the technology we had in place, we've been able to help there. I think 2021 will feel the aftershocks of the COVID impact, even if a vaccine is very successful. There's been plenty of disruption to routine healthcare provision that needs analysis to work out how to help practitioners give the best care and reach the people who are most in need. So there'll be lots of analysis work in the platform that will happen in 2021 there. But the kind of longer term goal is really to empower people with even better machine learning and insights, so that they really can improve their efficiency in their job. Because what we really don't want to do with our very experienced healthcare professionals is waste their time. And in many other industries, and it's no different in healthcare, we can improve people's efficiency by better analysis. And so there's a long journey, lots of problems to solve happily, that we will be using our EMIS X analytics for.
That's great. Very exciting. We have maybe time for one or two more questions. We have one here. What is your take on data quality challenges? Maybe you could speak to sort of how you manage data quality within this X analytics architecture.
Yeah, so we've taken an approach that says we will load our data into our platform is in a verbatim copy, so exactly as we receive it from our custodians, our data owners. And when we are to understand data quality problems, we will address them using views. So just like a normal relational database, Starburst Presto will support views that we can build on top of data that we store. And so that we can always go back to the original data and understand where a decision has been made, what data has enabled a decision to be made. We use views extensively, and we can use them to power our data lineage and show where an individual record that's presented to a practitioner has come from in the raw data. That raw data is also stamped with which database it came from and when it was last checked and so on. So we can use a number of the metadata features in Starburst and in AWS to keep a track of data lineage. and we use views to help with addressing data quality. But like all data platforms, data quality in healthcare is complex because there are tens of thousands of people entering data that is nominally the same, but people can use it for their own interpretation. And again, there's no magic bullet.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's see. I think purely in the interest of time, there are a couple other questions, and I guess I will ask that maybe we can take those offline just because we are running out of time. So I will just wrap up and close things out here on this concept of X analytics. You know, again, back to the Gartner model, X analytics is the intersection of known data, known questions, unknown questions, allowing you to incorporate your existing core data with new data. Allows fast access to all other data, the ability to join data from multiple sources, allows you to optimize for price performance by using lower cost storage for data that warrants it, and ultimately improving time to insight and accelerating your digital transformation. At the end of the day, we believe that this model allows you to make better and faster decisions. Better decisions because you now have access to data you maybe didn't have access to before, so you're able to inform your decision-making processes with a richer set of data. And faster because you're able to skip ETL processes if you so desire by going directly to the underlying data source. So that's the big idea. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Richard for the time and explaining to us everything you've done at EMIS. We look forward to continuing to work with you as you have such an important impact on the world today. Catherine, back to you.
Thank you both so much. As I said, we've still got those questions in the chat, so if you could both pop in there and answer them for us, that would be great. And also, don't forget you are able to directly message people through the platform as well, so keep those conversations going. Now, unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for this session today. So please do tune in to our next session. We have a wonderful panel discussion on building multidisciplinary data and analytics teams for maximum impact throughout the whole organization. We have joining us for that NTD Global, Get, Gut Funding Circle, Gym Group, and UK Power Networks as well. Goodness me, what a full panel. So simply pop back to the event schedule and click on the link to join that one. Once again, thank you so much, Justin and Richard, for that session.
Thank you, Catherine.